It was 2 a.m. when I overheard my daughter-in-law on the phone. Tomorrow we're taking her to the nursing home. Everything's already arranged. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my bag and slipped out the back door. By morning, they were desperately searching for me. They thought they could simply cast me aside, a frail, elderly woman, like an inconvenient piece of furniture. But what my son and his wife didn't realize was that the helpless old woman they were so eager to get rid of was about to unleash a storm they would never forget. My name is Margaret, and I'm 70 years old. For 5 years, I lived under the roof of my son, Daniel, and his wife, Victoria. I truly believed it was my home. I truly believed they were my family. Oh, how devastatingly wrong I was. It all started when I lost my dear husband. Daniel, my son, showed up at my door, tears streaming down his face, telling me he couldn't bear to leave me alone, that he was my only family, that he needed me close. His words, dripping with what I thought was genuine love, moved me to my core. I sold my beloved condo and packed my life into boxes, ready to start a new chapter with them. At first, it was idyllic. Daniel was affectionate, Victoria greeted me with warm smiles, and I felt useful, helping with the chores, taking care of them. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the warmth began to chill. Those sweet words turned sharp. The hugs became hollow gestures. And me, like a complete fool, I kept telling myself, it's just a rough patch, Margaret. Things will get better. Victoria was the first to drop the mask. It began with these seemingly innocent little comments. Margaret, don't you think you're eating a bit too much? Or, maybe you should stay in your room when we have guests. The house just looks tidier that way. My heart would clench, but I'd brush it off. And Daniel? He never once contradicted her. In fact, he started to back her up. Mom, Victoria's right. It's better if you get more rest. Rest. That became their favorite word. It was code for disappear. Code for we don't want you around. Months bled into years, and the humiliations grew sharper, more frequent. Victoria stopped cooking for me entirely. If you want something special, you can make it yourself, she'd say, that fake smile plastered on her face, the one that never reached her eyes. Daniel? He'd pretend not to notice. I'd be sitting there, my plate empty, watching them finish their dinner, and he'd ask, "Did you eat, Mom?" Distractedly, of course, never truly waiting for an answer. One night, I was washing the dishes after they'd gone to their room, and the wall between us was thin. I heard their voices. Victoria's, sharp and clear. "You can't keep this up forever, Daniel. She's too much of a burden." My hands, gripping the plate, started to tremble uncontrollably. Then Daniel's voice, "I know, but she's my mother." And Victoria, with pure venom in her tone, "Exactly. She's your mother, not mine. And I didn't marry you to become a full-time nurse for the elderly." A nurse for the elderly. That's all I was to her. Not a mother-in-law. Not a potential grandmother. Just a burden. My world shattered in that moment. It wasn't a rough patch. This was deliberate. This was cruel. The following weeks were an absolute hell. Victoria started treating me like I was invisible. She'd walk right past me without a glance, respond to my questions with one-word answers, or just ignore me completely. Daniel wasn't much better. He'd come home, kiss Victoria, and greet me with a quick nod, like I was some stranger in his own house. But what truly cut me to the bone was hearing them talk about me when they thought I couldn't hear. "She's getting slower," Victoria would whisper. Yesterday, it took her an hour to do something that should have taken 20 minutes. Daniel's hesitant reply, "Maybe we should look into some options." Options. That word haunted my sleepless nights. What kind of options? I didn't dare ask, but deep down, a cold certainty began to form. They were going to get rid of me. But what they didn't know, what they were too arrogant to ever find out, was that I had secrets of my own. Secrets I'd been holding on to, like aces up my sleeve, for the day I truly needed them. You see, during my 60 years of marriage, my late husband and I had been incredibly smart with our money. We had properties, investments, savings accounts that had quietly blossomed over the decades. When I sold my condo to move in with Daniel, I didn't spend that money. I invested it. And it had grown into a fortune. And there was something else, something they were completely oblivious to, something that could flip their entire world upside down if I ever chose to reveal it. Then came that damned August night. I was pretending to sleep in my small room at the end of the hall when I heard soft footsteps in the kitchen. It was Victoria, talking on the phone in a hushed voice. I crept silently to my bedroom door. Her words reached me like daggers, piercing through any last shred of hope. "Yes, I've already spoken with the director. She can take her in tomorrow. Daniel agrees. We just need her to sign the papers." My heart was hammering so loudly, I was terrified she could hear it through the door. A pause. Then Victoria again. "No, she doesn't know anything. Tomorrow, we'll tell her it's just a visit to see the place. Once she's there, it will be easier to convince her to stay." Another, longer pause. And then the chilling words, "Do I feel bad? Please. We've been putting up with her for 5 years. It's time for her to live her own life in the place where she belongs." My knees almost buckled beneath me. The nursing home. They weren't consulting me. They weren't giving me a choice. They were going to drag me away like an old dog to the pound. As if I were a piece of old furniture they wanted to get rid of. In that exact moment, something snapped inside me. I knew, with absolute clarity, that I had to act. I couldn't just lie there, waiting for morning to come, waiting for them to come and take me. Very slowly, I slipped back into my room and grabbed my purse. Inside were my most important documents, some cash, and my phone. It was all I needed for now. I waited until I heard Victoria go upstairs and her bedroom door click shut. Then, like a thief in my own house, I tiptoed to the back door. The cool night air hit my skin, a shocking jolt. For the first time in years, I took a deep, full breath and felt something akin to absolute freedom. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew one thing with undeniable certainty. I was never going to be anyone's victim again. I walked for an hour through the dark, quiet streets, the weight of years of humiliation lifting with every step, before finally hailing a cab. I gave the driver the address of the most elegant hotel in the city. If they were going to treat me like a homeless person, it was time to remind them exactly who I really was. The receptionist gave me a strange look when I walked in at 3 a.m. with only a purse, but my credit card spoke for itself. The presidential suite for 2 nights. To start, I told her, my voice surprisingly steady. I sat on that massive king-size bed in a room that cost more per night than Daniel earned in an entire week. And for the first time in years, I truly, truly smiled. At 6 in the morning, my phone started to ring. It was Daniel. I let it ring. He called again, and again, and again. Then the texts began to flood in. "Mom, where are you? We're worried. Please answer." Worried? What a convenient word to use now. By 8, Victoria had joined the chorus of desperate calls. Her voice on the voicemail was pure hysteria. "Margaret, please come back. We don't know what happened. Daniel is desperate." Desperate, all right. Probably because their little nursing home scheme had just blown up in their faces. I ordered room service, eggs Benedict, smoked salmon, fresh fruit, real Colombian coffee. As I ate on the terrace of my suite, overlooking the city, I imagined Daniel and Victoria tearing through the house, searching every corner, calling hospitals, maybe even the police. Let them worry. Let them feel even a fraction of the anguish, the fear, the utter despair I had felt for the past 5 years. After breakfast, I made some important calls. The first was to my bank. I wanted an exact figure of my available funds. The number surprised even me. My investments had performed far better than I'd dared to hope. The second call was more delicate. I dialed Benjamin Carter, the best family law attorney in the city. I knew him because he'd handled my husband's will years ago. "Mrs. Margaret?" His voice was clearly surprised. "How are you?" "Benjamin, I need to see you urgently," I told him. "I have a very complicated family situation." "Of course," he replied. "Can you come in this afternoon?" "I'll be there." The third call was perhaps the most crucial of all. I dialed a number I'd saved for more than 5 years, ever since moving in with Daniel. It was Lauren, my old friend and a fantastic real estate agent. "Margaret, what a surprise to hear from you. How are you, dear?" "Lauren," I said, "I need you to do a very special favor for me. Do you remember that property downtown you saw years ago?" The one you said would be perfect if I ever decided to be independent again. As we talked, my phone vibrated constantly with missed calls. Daniel had called 14 times. Victoria 8. They'd even found my late husband's number, which I still kept as an emergency contact, and had called there. How desperate it must be to lose control over someone you're used to manipulating. At 2 in the afternoon, I descended to the hotel lobby, dressed in my best pearl gray suit and my most elegant leather shoes. I'd made an appointment at the hotel's beauty salon. Manicure, pedicure, cut, and style. If I was going to start a war, I would do it looking absolutely impeccable. The stylist, a young woman named Katie, looked at me curiously. "Special occasion, ma'am?" "You could say that," I replied, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "It's the first day of the rest of my life." As Katie worked on my hair, I reflected on the last 5 years. How had I allowed them to treat me like that? When had I stopped valuing myself? The answer was painful but crystal clear, from the moment I believed that being a burden was better than being alone. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had money. I had resources. And most importantly, I had the truth on my side. At 4 in the afternoon, I arrived at Benjamin's office, perched on the 20th floor of a skyscraper in the financial district. The windows offered a sweeping view of the entire city, and from there, I could even see the neighborhood where Daniel lived. "Margaret, you look splendid," Benjamin said, pouring me a coffee. "But something tells me this isn't a social visit." I told him everything. The overheard conversation. The nursing home plot. My nighttime escape. Benjamin took meticulous notes, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "This is very serious, Margaret. What they planned could constitute elder abuse, especially if done without your consent." "So, what are my options?" I asked, my voice steady. "Many," he replied. "But first, tell me something. Do they know about your real financial situation?" "No," I said. "They have no idea. Daniel thinks I'm a poor widow living off his charity." Benjamin smiled then, for the first time in our meeting. "Then we have a considerable advantage." He laid out the legal options: restraining orders, lawsuits for emotional abuse, even criminal charges. But then, his eyes sparkling with a glint I immediately recognized and liked, he said, "But I have a different proposal. What if we teach them a lesson they will never forget?" "I'm all ears, Benjamin. We are going to show them exactly what the woman they thought they could discard is worth. But we will do it in a way that the blow is public, definitive, and completely legal." I left that office with a plan. A plan that would take a few weeks to execute, but would be worth every single minute of the wait. Back at the hotel, I finally decided to answer one of Daniel's calls. "Mom, thank God. Where are you? We've been looking for you everywhere. Victoria is crying. We thought something terrible had happened to you." His voice almost sounded genuinely concerned. "Almost. I'm fine, Daniel," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I just needed to go for a walk and clear my head." "A walk? It's been more than 12 hours. Where are you exactly?" "In a safe place. Don't worry about me." "Mom, please come home. We can talk about whatever's bothering you." Talk. As if it were that simple after all they'd done. "You know what, Daniel? You're right. We do need to talk. But not on the phone. In person. And when I'm ready." "When will that be?" he asked, bewildered. "Soon. Very soon." I hung up before he could reply. That night, as I had lobster for dinner in my suite, overlooking the glittering city lights, I raised a toast to myself. To the woman I had been, to the woman I was reclaiming, and to the powerful woman I was becoming. Daniel and Victoria had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the wrong woman. The following days were a whirlwind of strategic preparation and personal rediscovery. Every morning, I woke up in that luxurious suite, ordered breakfast, and worked on my battle plan with Benjamin. Daniel and Victoria kept calling, desperately. Their messages evolved from concern to pleading, and then, dangerously, to veiled threats. "Mom, this isn't funny anymore," Daniel said in one message. "Victoria is sick with nerves. You need to come back right now, or we will have to take more drastic measures." More drastic measures. Like taking me to a nursing home by force? How utterly predictable they were. But there was something else they didn't know. something Benjamin had uncovered during our conversations. It turns out, the house where they had lived all these years, the house Daniel considered his, actually had a much more complicated history. When my husband died, he left that property in a trust under my name. Daniel could live there, yes, as long as I was alive and consented. But technically, legally, the house was mine. He never bothered to read the full will documents. Why would he? After all, I was just his poor, widowed mother who depended on his generosity. On the 4th day of my disappearance, I decided it was time to begin the next phase. Lauren, my real estate agent friend, had found the perfect apartment. A penthouse in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, fully furnished, with 24-hour concierge service. "Margaret, this place is a dream," she told me as we toured it. 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a terrace with a hot tub, and the most spectacular view in the entire city. "When can I move in?" I asked, my heart singing. "Whenever you want." The owner is desperate to rent it to someone reliable. I signed the lease that same afternoon. 2 years, paid in advance in cash. After leaving Lauren's office, I took a taxi to the most elegant shopping mall in the city. It was time to renew my wardrobe. For years, I had dressed like the poor widow they thought I was, worn-out clothes, dull colors, comfortable but unstylish shoes. Today, that ended. At the most exclusive boutique, a saleswoman named Katie attended to me with that mix of professional courtesy and slight disdain reserved for customers who didn't look like they could afford the merchandise. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "I need a completely new wardrobe," I told her, meeting her gaze steadily. "Business suits, cocktail dresses, shoes, accessories, everything." Her expression changed dramatically when I pulled out my black card. 2 hours later, I walked out with 8 bags full of clothes that cost more than Daniel earned in 3 months. Dresses in emerald green, cherry red, shimmering gold, deep violet. I would never wear sad colors again. That night, as I was unpacking my glorious new acquisitions, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mrs. Margaret? This is Inspector Marcus Riley from the City Police. Your son Daniel filed a missing person report. Could you confirm that you're okay?" Interesting. They'd escalated the drama to involve the police. "Inspector," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I am perfectly fine. I am in full command of my mental faculties, and I decided to take a vacation. There is no disappearance to investigate. Could you tell me where you are exactly? Your son is very worried. I am in the city in a safe place." "Inspector, I want it on record that I left that house of my own free will and that I do not wish to be contacted until I am ready." "Understood, ma'am. Is there anything else you need?" "Yes. If my son or his wife file any more false reports about me, I want them to know that I might consider it harassment." The silence on the other end of the line was eloquent. The next day, I moved into the penthouse. The movers arrived at the hotel at 8 a.m. to transport my few belongings. It was strange how little I actually needed when it was truly about starting over. My new home was everything Lauren had promised and more. From the terrace, I could see the entire city spread out at my feet. I poured myself a glass of red wine and toasted to my new independence. But the real satisfaction came that afternoon when I finally decided to answer one of Daniel's calls. "Mom, thank God. The police told us you're okay, but we need to see you." "Where are you exactly?" "I'm at my new home, Daniel." "Your new home? What are you talking about?" "I moved. I got my own apartment." A long, shocked silence. "With what money?" "Mom, you don't have the resources to live alone. You need to come home before you do something you'll regret." "My home." I paused, letting the word hang in the air. "Interesting that you used that word. What do you mean?" "Nothing, son. Just that it's funny how sometimes words reveal more than we intend." "Mom, you're talking strangely," he said, a note of panic in his voice. "Victoria says maybe you need medical help. We could take you to a doctor for a checkup." There it was. The real Victoria, always lurking. Victoria says that. How thoughtful of her to be concerned about my mental health. She just wants what's best for you. We all want what's best for you. Like taking me to a nursing home? The silence that followed was deafening. "What are you talking about?" he finally choked out. "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Daniel. Mom, never what? Never planned to commit me without my consent? Never discussed how convenient it would be to get rid of the burden I represent. I don't know where you heard that, but I heard it from your wife's own lips, Daniel. At 2 in the morning, on the phone, arranging my fate as if I were a piece of old furniture to be discarded. Another long, tense silence. Mom, if you overheard something, it was out of context, out of context. We're taking her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged. What context could possibly make those words mean something different? We were just exploring options. Without consulting me. We thought it would be for the best. You thought it would be more convenient for you. I corrected him, my voice like ice. It's not like that. Then explain it to me, Daniel. Explain how planning to commit your mother without her knowledge is an act of love. He couldn't. There was no explanation that could justify the unjustifiable. I want to see you, he finally said, his voice defeated. We need to talk in person. I agree, I told him. But it will be when I decide, where I decide, and on my terms. When? Soon, son. Very soon. And when we do see each other, you're going to discover a few things about your poor, widowed mother that are going to surprise you very much. I hung up before he could respond. That night, as I had dinner on my terrace under the stars, I called Benjamin. How is our project coming along? Better than expected, Margaret. I have some very interesting information about Daniel and Victoria's finances. Apparently, they've been living beyond their means for years. How far beyond? Credit card debt, personal loans, a late mortgage. They've been using your presence in the house to justify expenses they can't afford. Interesting. There's more. Apparently, Victoria has been telling her friends that you have senile dementia and that's why you need special care. She's been building a narrative to justify the nursing home. My blood boiled. Do you have proof of that? I'm gathering it, Margaret. When we're done with this, they are going to regret ever messing with you. I hung up with a smile on my lips. Daniel and Victoria had no idea what was coming for them. A week after moving into the penthouse, I had established my new routine. Breakfast on the terrace, a workout in the building's gym, afternoons working with Benjamin on our master plan. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, powerful, completely in control of my own destiny. Daniel had stopped calling after our last conversation. Victoria, on the other hand, had intensified her attempts. Her voicemails revealed a growing desperation. Margaret, please come back. Daniel is a mess. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. This is destroying us as a family. As a family. What bitter irony. Margaret, I know you're angry, but running away doesn't solve anything. We're adults. We can talk like civilized people. Civilized people. Like when they were planning to commit me without my consent. But the message that truly caught my attention arrived on a Thursday night. Margaret, I need to be honest with you. Daniel is considering reporting you as mentally incompetent. He says your behavior proves you can't make rational decisions. Please come back before this gets out of control. There was the real Victoria, the veiled threat wrapped in false concern. I forwarded the message to Benjamin immediately. Perfect, he said when I called him. This is exactly what we needed. They're digging their own grave. How so? If Daniel tries to have you declared mentally incompetent, we would have grounds for a lawsuit for defamation and elder abuse. But more importantly, it would be the perfect time to reveal your true financial situation. Do you have everything ready for phase 2? Everything is prepared, I confirmed. Are you sure you want to do this in public? Absolutely, I stated, my resolve ironclad. I wanted to be as humiliating for them as it was for me to hear their plans that night. The plan was simple, yet utterly devastating. Lauren had organized a luxury property exhibition at the city's most exclusive hotel. Daniel and Victoria had been specifically invited, under the pretense of an investment opportunity. What they didn't know is that I would be the event's keynote speaker. The day arrived faster than expected. I dressed in my new emerald-colored suit, high heels, and jewelry I had bought especially for the occasion. In the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Elegant, powerful, intimidating. I arrived at the hotel an hour before the guests. The ballroom was perfectly prepared. Tables with property information, canapes, champagne, and a giant screen for presentations. Lauren was checking the final details when Benjamin arrived with a portfolio full of documents. "Ready for the show?" he asked, a conspiratorial glint in his eye. "More than ready." At 7, the guests began to arrive. Business people, investors, wealthy individuals genuinely interested in the properties. And then at 7:30, I saw them walk in. Daniel was wearing his only good suit, the one he saved for weddings and funerals. Victoria had tried to look elegant in a red dress she'd probably bought on sale. They looked completely out of place among the city's financial elite. I watched them from the other side of the ballroom as they nervously searched for whoever had invited them. Their faces showed a mix of nervousness and excitement. They probably thought someone had finally recognized their investment potential. Lauren went up to the small stage to give the welcome speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our exclusive exhibition of premium properties. Tonight, we have the honor of presenting a carefully chosen selection of the best real estate investments in the city." Daniel and Victoria were smiling nervously, trying to blend in. "But before we begin with the properties," Lauren continued, "I want to introduce you to an extraordinary woman, a visionary investor who has recently decided to significantly expand her real estate portfolio. Please, let's welcome Mrs. Margaret Vance." The audience's applause accompanied me as I walked onto the stage. From my elevated position, I could perfectly see Daniel and Victoria's faces. First, confusion. What was their poor, widowed mother doing at a luxury investment event? Then, dawning recognition. It was really me, but transformed, elegant, speaking with confidence in front of an elite audience. Finally, pure, unadulterated horror as they began to understand the implications of what they were seeing. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and firm, resonating through the room. "Over the last 5 years, I have learned a lot about the true value of things. Above all, I have learned that sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones who know us the least." I looked directly at where Daniel and Victoria were standing. Their faces had lost all color. "I have decided to share my story with you tonight because I believe it perfectly illustrates why it is so important to maintain our financial independence, regardless of our age." The audience listened attentively. Some had already noticed where I was directing my gaze. 5 years ago, I decided to move in with my son and his wife. I sold my property, believing it would be wonderful to live as a family. What I did not expect was to discover that my presence had become a burden to them. A murmur went through the ballroom. This was not the typical investment presentation they were expecting. 2 weeks ago, I happened to overhear a phone conversation. My daughter-in-law was arranging for me to be committed to a nursing home without my knowledge or consent. "We're taking her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged." Those were her exact words. The murmur intensified. Some guests began to look around, trying to identify the protagonists of this shocking story. Daniel tried to move toward the exit, but Victoria stopped him. She probably thought running away would only confirm their guilt. "That night, I made a decision," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Instead of becoming a victim of their cruel plan, I decided to remind them of something they had completely forgotten." I paused dramatically. That the woman they planned to discard as a nuisance had her own resources. Considerable resources. Benjamin appeared beside the stage with a portfolio of documents. "Tonight, I have purchased 3 properties from this very exhibition," I announced, sweeping my hand across the room. "A penthouse in the financial district, a country house in the mountains, and a commercial building downtown. Total investment, $2 million in cash." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Daniel looked as if he was about to faint. Victoria's mouth hung wide open. "I want this to serve as a lesson for everyone present," I concluded. "Never underestimate older people. And never, ever assume you know someone's true situation." I stepped down from the stage to thunderous applause. The audience was captivated by the sheer drama they had just witnessed. I walked directly toward Daniel and Victoria. Other guests had already realized who they were and were looking at them with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Hello, son," I said in a calm, almost serene voice. "Surprised to see me?" Daniel looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. His face had gone from white to red, and then to a sickly green. Victoria, on the other hand, looked like a marble statue, completely paralyzed. Mom, Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible. What? What is all this? This, my son, is reality. The reality that you two never bothered to get to know. The other guests began to gather discreetly, pretending to look at property brochures while shamelessly listening to our conversation. The drama was simply too juicy to ignore. Mrs. Margaret, Lauren intervened, a malicious smile playing on her lips. Are these the relatives you told me about? The ones who thought you needed special care? Victoria finally found her voice. Margaret, I don't understand anything. Since when do you have so much money? Since always, my dear Victoria. It's just that you assumed I was a poor, helpless widow. You never asked. You were never interested in really knowing my situation. Daniel tried to approach, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. Mom, if you had resources, why didn't you tell us? We could have what, Daniel? I cut him off, my voice cold. Treated me with respect? Consulted me before planning my life? Or you simply would have found more creative ways to take advantage? An older man who had been listening came over. Excuse me, ma'am, but is it true that they plan to commit you without your consent? Completely true, I replied, without taking my eyes off Daniel. My daughter-in-law arranged everything over the phone. It's all arranged were her words. The man shook his head in disgust. That's elder abuse. They should be in jail. Victoria turned as red as a tomato. That's not true. We only wanted what was best for her. We thought she needed more care. Care. My voice rose slightly, cutting through the murmuring crowd. Like ignoring me during dinners? Like making me feel invisible in my own house? Like arguing about how annoying my presence was? More people had gathered around us. Some were discreetly recording with their phones. Margaret, please, Daniel pleaded, his voice cracking. People are staring at us. We can discuss this in private. In private? I countered, a chilling calm in my tone. Like when you discussed my future in private, without including me? Benjamin appeared at my side with a folder. Mrs. Margaret, would you like me to show them the documents now? What documents? Victoria asked nervously, her eyes starting between me and Benjamin. The documents that prove that the house you've been living in for these 5 years is legally mine, I replied calmly. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel looked as if he had been slapped. What are you saying? I'm saying that when your father died, he left that property in a trust under my name. You can live there as long as I'm alive and I consent. But technically, legally, the house is mine. Victoria staggered backward, grabbing Daniel's arm for support. That can't be true. Benjamin opened the folder and presented the documents. These are the trust papers, duly registered and notarized. Mrs. Margaret is the legal owner of the property. Daniel took the documents with trembling hands. But I thought Dad told me the house would be mine. Your father told you that you could live there and take care of me, I clarified. That's not the same as being the owner. An elegant woman who had been listening came closer. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Julia Vance from the city's financial newspaper. Would you be willing to give an interview about your story? Of course, I replied, a small, triumphant smile curving my lips. I think it's important for people to know what can happen to senior citizens when family makes the wrong assumptions. Daniel grabbed my arm, his grip desperate. Mom, please don't make this public. We can sort this out among ourselves. I gently freed myself from his grip. Like when you sorted out my future among yourselves, without consulting me. Without including me? Treating me like an object to be disposed of. It wasn't like that. Victoria shouted, completely losing her composure. We took care of you for 5 years. We gave you a roof over your head, food, everything you needed. You gave me? My voice turned icy. You gave me a roof over my head in my own house. The murmur of indignation from those present was audible. Several were clearly on the side of the elegant older woman who had been betrayed by her own family. Mrs. Margaret, the journalist said, her recorder discreetly poised. What are your plans now? Very simple, I replied with a radiant smile. I am going to live my life on my own terms, in my own home, with my own money. And I am going to make sure my story serves as a warning to other seniors who may be in similar situations. Daniel looked completely defeated, his shoulders slumped. And what about us? Where are we going to live? That, I said, as I walked towards the exit, is an excellent question. One you should have asked yourselves before you planned on sending me to a nursing home. The following days were a whirlwind of media activity. The story of the betrayed millionaire grandmother had gone viral on social media. The videos from the event had been shared thousands of times, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. But the most satisfying part was watching Daniel and Victoria try to manage their public image. Victoria had created an Instagram account where she tried to tell her side of the story. People don't understand. She cried in her tearful videos. We love Margaret like family. We only wanted what was best for her. Modern nursing homes are beautiful places where seniors can socialize and receive professional care. Her followers didn't believe a word of it. The comments were ruthless. Without consulting her at 2 a.m.? That's not love, it's abuse. And why didn't you know she had money? Weren't you interested in actually getting to know the woman you lived with? My grandmother always says, the family that betrays you once will betray you always. Daniel had opted for a different strategy. He started calling me directly, leaving increasingly desperate messages. Mom, this is getting out of control. Victoria is getting threats online. People recognize us on the street and insult us. Please say something publicly to calm things down. Calm things down. After 5 years of humiliation, they wanted me to defend them publicly. The message that struck me the most arrived a week after the event. Mom, we lost our jobs. Victoria was fired because the story reached her office. I was asked to resign because my family situation was affecting the company's image. We don't have money to pay rent. If we have to move, please help us. Help them. Funny how their tone changed when they needed something. That afternoon, I had the most important interview scheduled so far, the most watched morning television show in the country. Julia had arranged for it to be live, broadcast from my penthouse to showcase my new life. I prepared carefully, a violet dress, elegant jewelry, perfect makeup. When the camera crew arrived, my apartment looked like something out of a decorating magazine. We're live in 3, 2, 1. Good morning. I'm Julia Vance, and I'm here with Margaret Vance, the woman whose story has moved the entire country. Margaret, tell us, how do you feel after everything that has happened? Julia, I feel free. For the first time in 5 years. Free to live without apologizing for existing. Free to make my own decisions. Free to be treated with the respect I deserve. Your daughter-in-law, Victoria, has been giving interviews saying that you only wanted to protect her, that the nursing home was for your well-being. Julia, when someone plans your future without consulting you, secretly, in the middle of the night, that's not protection, that's control. And when they have also been treating you like a burden for years, it's hard to believe their motives were truly altruistic. What would you say to other seniors who might be going through similar situations? I would tell them that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, that you shouldn't let anyone make you feel like a burden. And above all, to maintain control over your own lives and finances. Now, we understand that your son Daniel has been trying to contact you. Yes, he has been calling, especially since they lost their jobs. And what do you plan to do about it? Look, Julia, I'm not a vengeful person, but I'm not a foolish person either. For 5 years, Daniel and Victoria treated me as if I were invisible when they thought I depended on them. Now that they've discovered I have my own resources, suddenly I'm important again. Are you willing to reconcile with them? A real reconciliation requires a genuine acknowledgement of the harm caused. It requires sincere apologies. And it requires real changes in behavior. So far, all I've received are excuses and justifications. Victoria says the consequences have been disproportionate, that losing their jobs is too much of a punishment. Disproportionate. My voice hardens slightly, a steely edge to it. You know what's disproportionate? Planning to commit someone without their consent. That is disproportionate. What are your plans for the future? I'm considering creating a foundation to help seniors facing family abuse. I want my experience to serve to protect others. One last question, Margaret. Do you regret anything? I thought carefully before answering. I regret allowing them to treat me badly for so long. I regret wasting 5 years feeling like a burden when, in reality, I was an independent and capable woman. But I do not regret taking back control of my life. When the interview ended, my phone exploded with messages. Hundreds of people sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking out, offering support. But the message that truly caught my attention came from an unknown number. Mrs. Margaret, this is Stephen Clark, an investigative journalist. I have information about your son's finances that I think you would be interested in knowing. Could we talk? I smiled, a dark, satisfied smile as I dialed the number. Daniel and Victoria hadn't seen anything yet. The meeting with Stephen was revealing in ways I hadn't expected. He arrived at my penthouse with a folder full of documents and a serious expression that immediately put me on alert. Mrs. Margaret, after your television interview, I decided to investigate your family situation more deeply. What I found is disturbing. He sat across from me in the living room and opened the folder on the glass table. For the last 5 years, Daniel and Victoria have been using your presence in the house to obtain credits and loans they couldn't have gotten otherwise. My blood ran cold. What do you mean exactly? They submitted documents declaring you as a financially dependent person with mental health issues. This allowed them to access government assistance programs, tax deductions for elder care, and preferential loans. They financially benefited from pretending I had mental problems. Exactly. Here are the tax returns for the last 3 years. They received deductions for medical expenses that never existed, subsidies for elder care they never really provided, and several loans they justified by saying they needed the money for your care expenses. I reviewed the documents in disbelief. There were fake medical bills, receipts for medications I had never taken, even reports from a psychiatrist who was supposedly treating me for senile dementia. How did you get all this? I have contacts in various institutions. When a story like yours becomes public, sometimes people who were previously silent decide to speak up. Stephen pulled out more papers. But there's something more serious. Victoria has been running a blog for 2 years where she documents her heroic struggle caring for her mother-in-law with dementia. He showed me printouts of the blog. The title was Living with Margaret, a devoted daughter-in-law's diary. I read some entries with growing horror. Today, Margaret had another episode. She couldn't remember where she put her medicine and blamed me for hiding it. It's so hard to stay patient when the illness makes her so aggressive. Daniel is exhausted. Working all day and then coming home to deal with his mother's mood swings is wearing him down. But we carry on out of love. The doctors say Margaret's condition is only going to get worse. We're considering professional care options. Is all of this made up? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Completely fabricated. But here's the interesting part. The blog has generated income. It has sponsors, affiliate links, even a donation account to help with Margaret's medical expenses. How much money have they made from this? Approximately $15,000 over the last 2 years. I was speechless. They hadn't just planned to get rid of me. They had been profiting from cruel lies about my mental health for years. There's more, Stephen continued. Victoria also created a profile on a crowdfunding platform 6 months ago. They were raising money to renovate the house and make it safer for a person with dementia. How much did they raise? $8,000 so far. It was too much. I got up from my seat and walked to the window. The city view that usually calmed me now felt blurred by a cold, burning rage. What can I do legally with this information? A lot. Fraud, swindling, misappropriation, defamation. We could build a solid case that could result in criminal charges. My phone rang at that moment. It was Daniel, probably calling for the 15th time that week. This time, I decided to answer. Yes, Mom. Thank God you answered. We need to talk urgently. I'm busy, Daniel. Mom, please. Victoria is having panic attacks. The harassers online are posting our address. Last night, someone threw eggs at the house. What a shame. Mom, we're your family. You can't be okay with this happening to us. My family? The family that diagnosed me with senile dementia without my knowledge to obtain financial benefits. A long silence. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Victoria's blog. I'm talking about the false tax returns. I'm talking about the loans you got by lying about my mental condition. Mom, I don't know anything about that. You don't know anything about the blog Living with Margaret, where your wife documents my supposed dementia episodes? You don't know anything about the donations you've been receiving for my medical care? You don't know anything about the fake medical bills you submitted to get tax deductions? This time, The silence was deafening. Daniel, I have an investigative journalist sitting right here with documents that prove everything I've just said. Do you want to keep lying? Mom, if there was anything irregular, it was Victoria's idea. I didn't know the details. You didn't know the details of stealing money using my name? You didn't know the details of inventing a mental illness I don't have. Victoria said it was legal. She said that since you lived with us, we were entitled to those benefits. And the blog? Was it also legal to lie publicly about my mental health to make money? Mom, I didn't read the blog. Victoria handled those things. Daniel, do you know what the difference is between you and me? What? When I make a mistake, I own it and take responsibility. You, on the other hand, always find someone else to blame. Mom, please, can we fix this? No, Daniel, we can't. This gets fixed with justice. I hung up and looked at Stephen. When can we file the lawsuits? The lawsuits were filed on a Tuesday morning. Benjamin had worked all night to prepare the documents: tax fraud, swindling, defamation, identity theft, and elder abuse. It was a legal arsenal that would leave Daniel and Victoria with no escape. But before the documents even reached their hands, I had one last, devastating card to play. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? Stephen asked me as he set up the recording equipment in my living room. Completely sure. The people who donated money believing Victoria's lies deserve to know the truth. We had decided to do a live broadcast on social media. In just 2 hours, more than 50,000 people had registered to watch. My story had truly captured the nation's attention. We're live in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. I am Margaret Vance, and today I am going to share information with you that will completely change what you thought about my family situation. I looked directly at the camera. Over the last few days, an investigative journalist has discovered that my son and daughter-in-law have been lying about my mental health for years to obtain financial benefits. I held up a printout of Victoria's blog. My daughter-in-law, Victoria, created a blog called Living with Margaret, where she invented a completely false version of my life. According to her writings, I suffer from senile dementia, have aggressive episodes, and require constant medical care. None of this is true. As you can see in this broadcast, I am in perfect mental condition. I manage my own finances. I live independently, and I make all my own decisions without help. I read one of the blog entries aloud. Today, Margaret had another episode. She couldn't remember where she put her medicine and blamed me for hiding it. I paused, my gaze piercing. This entry is dated on a day I was in New York, closing a real estate investment. The live comments multiplied by the second. People were outraged. But the lie goes beyond the blog, I continued. Using these false stories, they obtained tax deductions for non-existent medical expenses, government subsidies for elder care they never provided, and donations from well-intentioned people who believed their narrative. I showed the tax documents to the camera. In total, they have obtained approximately $25,000 by lying about my mental condition. My phone started ringing insistently. It was Daniel, probably watching the broadcast in a panic. I see my son is trying to call me right now, I said, showing the phone to the camera. Probably to ask me to stop this broadcast. I decided to answer and put it on speaker. Mom, please stop that broadcast. You're destroying our lives. Hello, Daniel. I'm live with 50,000 people. Is there anything you want to say publicly about Victoria's blog and the money you obtained by lying about my health? Mom, I didn't know you were live. Hang up right now. Why should I hang up, Daniel? Are you afraid of people hearing your side of the story? This is all Victoria's fault. I didn't know anything about the blog. She handled those things. The comments exploded. People couldn't believe he was blaming his wife live on air. Daniel, so you admit that Victoria lied about my mental condition? I don't know what to admit. Just stop the broadcast. Do you admit that you received money under false pretenses? Mom, please. It's a simple question, Daniel. Yes or no? A long, agonizing silence. Then we heard Victoria's voice, shrill with panic, shouting in the background. Hang up. Don't say anything else. Is that Victoria? I asked, my voice calm, but with a hint of steel. Does she want to join the conversation? I'm sure the 50,000 people watching us would have some interesting questions for her. No. Victoria screamed, her voice breaking. Daniel, hang up now. Victoria, I said, raising my voice so it would carry through the phone. Could you explain to the audience why you invented stories about my dementia? Could you explain how you justified the money you earned with those lies? You have no right to ruin our lives like this. Victoria shouted, grabbing the phone from Daniel. I have no right after you ruined mine for 5 years. We took care of you. We gave you a home. Victoria, I'm reading your blog live. It says here I had a violent episode on March 15th. Could you explain what happened that day? That was because it turns out on that day I was in Miami visiting my investment broker. I have receipts, photos, witnesses. Those details don't matter. They don't matter? Lying about someone's mental health doesn't matter. You abandoned us. You disappeared in the night like a thief. Victoria, I left because I overheard your phone conversation, planning to commit me to a nursing home without my consent. It was for the best. The best for me, or the most convenient for you. The call was abruptly cut off. The comments went wild. People were virtually applauding, sharing the broadcast, expressing their support. As you can see, I continued calmly, looking back at the camera. It's hard to maintain lies when you're confronted with real evidence. This broadcast isn't just about my personal story. It's about something much bigger, the systematic abuse of senior citizens by family members who take advantage of their perceived vulnerability. Tomorrow, my lawyers will file formal lawsuits against Daniel and Victoria for fraud, swindling, and defamation. All the money they obtained fraudulently will be returned to the corresponding institutions and to the people who donated believing their lies. But more important than legal justice is moral justice. I want my story to serve as a warning. Never let anyone take away your dignity, no matter how old you are or how vulnerable you may seem. Thank you for joining me today. I will keep you informed about the progress of the legal case. I ended the broadcast with over 80,000 viewers. My phone immediately exploded with messages of support, interview offers, and contacts from other seniors sharing their own stories. But the message that satisfied me the most came an hour later. It was from the crowdfunding platform, informing me that they had closed Victoria's account and frozen the funds pending distribution. Justice was finally beginning. 6 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my penthouse, enjoying my morning coffee while reading the day's news. The front page of the local newspaper had a headline that made me smile. Couple sentenced to prison for fraud against a senior citizen. Daniel had received 2 years in prison. Victoria, as the mastermind of the scheme, had received 3.5 years. In addition, they would have to pay a $50,000 fine and perform community service in nursing homes once they completed their sentences. Justice had been complete and satisfying. But the most rewarding part was not their punishment, but what I had built with my freedom. The Margaret Vance Foundation for the Protection of Seniors had already helped over 200 people in situations similar to mine. We had established a helpline, free legal services, and a financial education program for older adults. My story had inspired changes in state legislation on elder abuse. It was now more difficult for family members to obtain fraudulent benefits, and there were stronger protections for vulnerable seniors. But perhaps most importantly, I had rediscovered myself. At 71, I had learned to dance salsa, taken painting classes, and traveled to places I had only dreamed of visiting. I had an active social life, true friends, and a renewed purpose. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Lauren, my real estate agent, who had become one of my best friends. Margaret, did you see the news? I just read about the sentencing. Perfect. No, not that. Did you see that Victoria tried to sell her story to a television production company? I laughed. Seriously? What story? The one about how she defrauded her mother-in-law and ended up in prison. Apparently, she wanted to make a series about the dark side of social media and how internet justice destroyed her life. The nerve. And what happened? The production company rejected the proposal after investigating the facts. Turns out they prefer stories with more sympathetic protagonists. That afternoon, I had an important meeting. I had decided to write a book about my experience, and my editor was coming to discuss the final details of the contract. Margaret, she said as we reviewed the manuscript, your story is powerful because it's real. There's no fictional revenge or magical justice. It's simply a woman who decided not to be a victim. That was exactly the message I wanted to convey. Have you thought about making any contact with Daniel now that he's in prison? She asked. I've thought about it, I admit it. But I've decided I have nothing to say to him until he shows real change. Empty apologies don't rebuild broken trust. And if he wanted to make amends when he gets out, he would have to start by fully acknowledging what he did, without excuses, without blaming Victoria. He would have to show that he understands the harm he caused. And he would have to accept that the relationship would never be the same. That evening, as I prepared dinner in my gourmet kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had taken. The woman who had escaped through the back door that morning had been a frightened victim. The woman cooking now was an empowered survivor. My story had proven something that many people forget. It is never too late to reclaim your life. I had learned that kindness does not mean being a doormat. That family love does not justify abuse. That age is not synonymous with vulnerability. And that sometimes, the best revenge is simply to live well. My phone showed a message from a 68-year-old woman in Mexico who had seen my interview. Mrs. Margaret, your story gave me the courage to confront my family. After 2 years of humiliation, I finally stood up for myself. Thank you for showing me that I deserve respect. Messages like that arrived daily. Each one reminded me why it had been worth making my story public. As I had dinner on my terrace, watching the city lights stretch to the horizon, I silently toasted to all the women who had found their voice after years of silence. Daniel and Victoria had thought they were discarding me like trash. Instead, they had freed me to become the best version of myself. On my desk was a photo of my late husband. I spoke to him as I did every night. My love, I know you would be proud. I didn't let them turn me into a victim. I defended my dignity and helped others defend theirs. That night, before sleeping, I wrote in my journal, I don't regret adopting Daniel when he was a child. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. The next morning, I would have a new interview, another opportunity to tell my story, another chance to help someone who felt invisible in their own life. Because in the end, I had discovered that my true purpose was not to be the perfect mother or the accommodating mother-in-law. My purpose was to simply be Margaret, a whole, independent, and free woman.